Okay, welcome back to Tech Leader Stage, our next and last panel of today, Decoding Trends, Strategies for Success in the Evolving Digital Domain. Please welcome with me on stage Ignacio Risco, Senior Director, Developer Marketing from Red Hat, Irina Goncharova, Director, Azure Sales from Microsoft, Robert Thieleker, Unit Director, Health, Piabo, and Ash Ryan Arnwine, Director of Developer Relations from Nihilus.
Have a seat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to this great final act today, and we promise you a wonderful finale of this wonderful World Congress, and having a huge topic: decode digital trends and what it means for business strategy. I'm Robert. I'm a communications consultant and unit director of Piabo, Europe's leading tech agency, all things digital, from InsurTech to FinTech to health tech. So very much deeply involved into all these digital businesses. And I'm introducing the short names you were given, but I think we go in more detail a little bit because they know themselves much better than I do. So please go ahead introducing a little bit more of what you do and what drives you to this stage. Irina, maybe you start.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks for you guys all being here after two almost closing but very much exciting days. My name is Irina. I'm responsible for Azure in Germany, leading a group of people helping our customers and developers to make the best out of the Microsoft platform.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Ignacio. I lead developer marketing and strategy at Red Hat. And basically what I do is I organize all type of activities and training sessions for developers.
Ash.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ash. I lead the developer relations team at Nihilus, where we help developers around the world use our APIs to connect their apps to all of the email and calendar providers out there.
Yeah, and because it's a panel about trends and decoding trends, I thought we start with a selection of trends and asking what is the most important one for you. So the difficult one is not, well, getting the trends, but choosing one of those big trends out there. I give it 3. So maybe you can select one and set your priority. The one is, of course, cybersecurity and data protection. So the meaning is, well, either driving or being a big hurdle, so shaping the future of digitization also means. So the one is data security and data protection, what I see. The next one is, of course, AI and data availability, closely connected. And the third one is shortage of developers. What is shaping the future of digitization?
Yeah.
Irina, I want to start.
I'm happy to start. I think we all agree that there is no AI without cloud, and there is no cloud without security. So if I'm about to pick one of those that you just mentioned, I think we should start with security. I'm not saying that's the most important one, but if I follow what Satya Nadella says, he says security is the #1 priority for everybody in the market and for everybody in the company. And I think that there is no doubt in my mind that the cybersecurity has multiple layers, and we absolutely have to cover all of those.
Ignacio, your turn.
Yeah, and also I think that when we say trends, trends are things that goes and come and goes. Security has always been there, will always be there. It's not a trend, it's a classic. So we are just trying to survive with security. I mean, today we have problems about security. I mean, security is always going to be one of the top priorities. And just adding the angle of open source, more and more we see code built on the code of others. If you build on the code of others, the first thing that you need to be sure is that the security that you are taking when you are building your own solutions is also secure. So again, I don't think that it's going to be a trend. I think that it's going to be a permanent issue.
But maybe just getting into this, because when we did a research a couple of years ago about what is the big roadblocks in digitization, and so it's with IT professionals, 5% said it's really data security. And I was wondering that either they're very optimistic and very, very confident that they've solved the problem, or they just, well, didn't see it as important as you did. And of course, So where does this discrepancy come from, Ash? Do you have, well, because it's still staggering me a little bit.
Well, I was listening to a podcast just this morning by tech analyst Ben Thompson, who does a blog called Stratechery. And he was asking the question of like whether or not ransomware in some ways is almost good because it's forcing us to price in the idea that security actually matters. And I think until recent years, it was pretty easy for the average developer to kind of skip over that in favor of the rush to build the next feature that they're being asked to. So of course, ransomware is not a good thing at all, but like he was kind of thinking through that concept of like the more this stuff keeps happening, the more we're forced to actually deal with it up front.
So maybe, Irina, what does it mean for resistance? I mean, it's easy to say it's very important, you have to care for it.
Yeah.
But how do you do it within a business model, or how do you get revenue out of it in the end?
Out of security or out of AI? Like, which of the trends?
No,
All right,
this
okay.
one time we're still in security.
Yeah,
so
we're still in
it's
security.
Not
All right,
just
okay.
well,
So let me try to decompose this.
Yeah.
I'd say not everything immediately, like not every feature has to be leading the revenue ROI on that particular feature. Just like when you drive the car, the seat belt on the car is not the leading feature for the ROI and the selling of the car, but you're not going to sell any cars without a seat belt. So to me, when we say, and Microsoft follows the principle of zero trust, and a zero trust principle says, you have to be ready that there will be a breach. You have to be ready that there will be incidents, and you have to be ready that there will be attacks. And I think that goes back to the trends. So that has increased fundamentally X times in the past years, and very much so in the past 12 to 24 months. And with AI coming
Russia
in,
yeah.
state actors of different kinds.
Okay.
But with AI coming in, the security attacks and the security breach vector becomes even more sophisticated. So the trend is not that security been there and will stay there. The trend is that at any level of your source code, your data, your perimeter, even like the training of your developers and the training of your end users, the security becomes a paradigm that everybody has to account for. And I think that's new. And if we say zero trust, it means that we have to make sure that in any layer of, not just on the platform and the database, but in any point of your software development cycle, you have to make sure that you actively have teams working on trying to breach in so that you can be sure that your software will survive the cycle of attack.
And I think that the big change also is that developers need to start thinking that security is a problem of others.
Yeah.
Because normally what happens is that they just think that, no, I am a developer, I am here to code, to launch new features, and security is the responsibility of the DevSecOps team. I have nothing in common with them, is the problem. The problem is that the DevSecOps teams are going to look at you in order to ensure that the code that you are using is already secure. So again, that is probably the biggest change in the mentality that we need to convince developers about.
Okay. Well, you mentioned it, AI. I want to get to AI right now because obviously one of the big trends, and everybody's talking about it. Who want to, out of three, who want to choose the AI as the most important trend, or would you say, well, for me as well, it's not. It's more important, but it's not the most important.
You start.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm super excited about it, but I do think I'd take a fairly sober view of, like, it's not absolutely everything. It won't sort of, about a year ago was the first time I think I ever saw developers start wringing their hands a bit, saying, like, oh, no, are we still going to have jobs? And hopefully by now we realize, yes, we will. But yeah, I think that there's something really exciting in the middle ground there of this will change everything, and it's just a hype cycle that won't matter in a few years. So I don't know, I think for me right now, like one of the most interesting trends is just like as people are pushing at the edges, trying to figure out like what you can do when it comes to things that aren't generic, right? So I can go into OpenAI today and ask it, what color is the sky? It'll probably give me the right answer, and that's neat, and there's a lot of examples we could give of that kind of thing, but if I ask it, for example, you know, when's the last time that I emailed my boss? It can't tell me that, thankfully. But there are ways that we can start pushing on those edges to really come up with some really cool systems that make that possible. That's one of the key themes I think I've been hearing throughout this entire WeAreDevelopers this year is people pushing on that. How do we personalize it a bit more? What are the techniques, the best practices?
Yeah, and you mentioned because what is staggering me as well, or this kind of discussion or debate on how we get revenue out of AI. So where's the revenue? Where's the business model? So where's the ROI in AI? Because right now it's always massive investments, but very little revenue.
Yeah, I mean, you can take this perspective, or you can flip the perspective and say, eventually, so I think the two things that are true. Think number one, AI does change the world, just like software changed the world of traditional businesses 10, 20 years ago. AI is changing the world of how we perceive the traditional business moving forward today. So we're living truly through the time of innovation. Number two is AI on its own, without any specific application. I'm 100% with Ash on this one. You have to have the business case and you have to have the story, but it also becomes a commodity, and it will become commodity very fast. So how do you make the money out of commodity? By making sure that your product that integrates AI in your tooling system meets the market where it needed most. If you think of an e-commerce in a retailer, if you think of, we just launched a large co-pilot from a Siemens Robotics where people can have a natural language interaction with a robot. We enable a whole industry to do things differently. So now, if you don't do that, and if you stop doing that, you will eventually try to sell the product that is way behind of everything else. So, in my view, the ROI of that motion today comes from having innovation, developing new business models, but also pushing the edge of what is possible today. So today, let's take a specific example. I'm in a banking business. I have a Moody's application that I need to run if I'm a trader or if I make an analysis on a bond on an exchange. Today, it's an extra step. Today is already a Moody's Copilot available for the banking that is part of your team's interaction. So you actually interact with the Copilot as if you would interact with a real person, which makes your access faster. So imagine all of those people out there who uses SAP software today or any other application that immediately becomes available at your fingertips. You just enable innovation that wasn't there yesterday. And to me, that's what will capitalize at the end. But you guys, what's your perspective?
Well, I mean, to put things in perspective, yes, AI is a trend, but again, it's not the first time. I mean, I remember when everything was about desktop to mobile. Yeah, mobile is going to change the world. Who are going to develop the applications for mobile, etc. And I was like, you are just going to change. We are going to teach you new technologies, and then you are going to change, and you are going to create applications for mobile. Then, after a while, was not mobile. By the way, at that point, I was in Nokia, so I moved from the PC industry from Apple to Nokia because that was the big transition. Then, some years later, mobile is dead, cloud. Okay. Who is going to create applications for the cloud? On-premises is dead. Yeah, no, on-premises is not dead. On-premises is dead. Cloud is there. Who is going to create applications for the cloud? You. Exactly the same people. Now we say AI. Yeah, fantastic. It's just the next. Who is going to create applications for AI? You. Exactly the same people. What we are going to do, again, the process is always the same. We have new technologies. We don't know yet for what we are going to use those technologies. We launch the technologies. We ask the people, what do you want to do with those? And then they start figuring out. I was talking in the session that I did about the topic. There are some good cases already going on in supply chain management, in HR. So guys, look at what other companies are doing, figure it out, learn the new technologies, and apply to your companies. It's not rocket science. And again, it's not the first time, guys.
Yeah, but I think there's one difference to past applications, because there's a huge dependence on society getting into it, well, bringing the data into it and getting the data learning to it. And on the other hand, we have an increase in sensitivity towards giving data away, gated, well, applications where you say, okay, this data is private, this data is not for general use. You have huge discussions in OpenAI, which kind of data they use. How do we deal with that? I mean, is that kind of a big hurdle in applications on AI and getting the data accessible? Maybe we should.
So this is something I've actually been playing with a bit recently. So let's say last year, if we were having the same discussion and people were talking about ways to customize a large language model, maybe we would have been talking about training your own model or fine-tuning, which are still two great options, but they're also potentially slow and expensive and require a lot of expertise. One of the key topics this year has been what's known as RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation. And without getting too much in the details, it's basically taking your quote-unquote documents or your data, putting them in a special database, and then using that to augment your prompt to the large language model. And so I think there are a couple of things there, kind of the tug and pull of getting private data or bespoke data sets into an LLM, and also the questions around, wait, you're sending my data where? So some of the fun things I've been playing with just locally recently has been, using our APIs at Nihilus to pull in all of my Gmails. And then I can put that into a vector database and have a quick system in relatively quick time where I'm prompting an LLM, but on the way, it stops by that vector database, finds emails that might be relevant to my query, and then passes that to the LLM. And you might say, LLM, large language model, you mean you're sending all of your Gmail to OpenAI? I mean, you could do that, but maybe your users don't want you to. So one of the really fun things has been like starting to run models locally. You take these large language models via something like an OLAMA. OLAMA is a command line interface for developers. You pull it down, you can talk to it in your terminal, but it comes with a REST API locally on your machine. It's incredibly slow today, but I'm running it on a MacBook Air M2, and it's not that slow. It's going to get much faster. And so this is where it gets interesting, because if you can use services like Nihilus or other things where you're pulling in bespoke data with the permission of the user, and you're using LLMs that are somehow local to your application stack, suddenly you've got something there that is really compelling, something you can't replicate in a public service.
And to double down on this one, we also see the surge of small language models, which can work offline, which can work on mobile. And I think that evolution of what we can do on AI, it's just so incredibly fast. There's an exponential curve of what's happening right now in the industry because of the situations. And we also talk about the data lakes. So if you go away from a consumer and if you go into enterprise space, then we see that enterprise actually develop their own data lake. They're very protective of their own data. They ensure that they have layers of security. We already talked about that. And then they take the either large language model or small language models and run very deductive on the data that surface their business needs without exposing the data of the users.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to add the data point, in Hugging Face, right now you have 700,000 different models. So what we see is more and more, you take the model, you fine-tune the model, or through RAG, you change the model, you keep it locally, so you keep the cost, and you create your own personalized model. So what we see in the future is millions of large language models adapted to particular needs. Rather than, yes, it's true that there will still be some very big models, and that is going to continue, but we see more and more companies creating their own private AI, and how they are going to do that, probably that is the trend.
Okay, but that's kind of the business model for Mistral as well, right? They combining open source AI models and using them, well, orchestrating them somehow.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does it open source come in? Because of course there's a fear of OpenAI or others dominating the field. You don't see that?
Well, I mean, it's not fear. What we see is that in the large language models, what you have is always the open options are the closed options. But exactly the same as in the rest of the software industry. You have the open possibilities, and then you have the closed opportunities. I mean, we consider that they will coexist. What we put the focus on is mainly on the innovation that the open source is bringing and has been bringing, basically because everyone can do whatever they consider that they want to do, and then the community is going to say if that is a good feature or is not. I think that they have been coexisting during the last 20 years, and I don't think that that is going to change. So you will still have the OpenAI, the Anthropic, etc. in the closed model, and you will have the Mistrals or the Granite from IBM on the open, and I think that they coexist. Just to close on that, on IBM, they are putting a lot of focus on Granite. So I think that one of the key elements that the key question that is going to be is about transparency. Because of legal requirements, and specifically coming from here, the UA, I mean, they are going to put a lot of focus on, is this transparent? Where is the data coming from? Is legally compliant with the industry? I mean, that is going to be one of the key elements. That is, do you know where OpenAI is having the data or where they have extracted the data?
Okay, yeah. But still, I mean, we're still in Germany, so still getting to the oligopoly or monopoly case and who's owning the future in the end. All this runs on the cloud and cloud providers. I looked it up at the first quarter of 2024. There's a market share of 66% by the three. So Azure, Google, and AWS. So it's a huge part, and the others are very, very much smaller. Do you see any monopoly in the cloud space, and if yes or if no, why not, and does it mean anything? Or is that, a different to the past where you said, the winner takes it all?
I don't think there is such a thing as a winner takes it all, because what you just referred to is what we're talking as a physical infrastructure, availability at a large scale, and the cost of this scale is effectively comes down to the general public, the users, the enterprises. I don't think there is a monopoly on AI, because every single person of 15,000 plus who walking these halls are the people who develop the real cases for the future. And frankly, most of the companies I work with will have dual cloud strategy. Some of them will have single cloud strategy, as with Kubernetes and Dockers. You're always portable. So I don't think there is such a thing as a monopoly in terms of the potential and the future of AI. I think there is a healthy competition, and let's make sure we stay in a healthy competition and we work on transparency and we work on responsible AI. I was actually deeply impressed when we announced 3.2 billion investment in Germany. We had Brad Smith and Chancellor Scholz on stage. And I remember Brad said, we just signed up on a responsible and Responsible AI Act across the entire industry with Mistral, with OpenAI, with Google, with Amazon, to prevent the deep fakes, to have this responsible AI across the entire industry. So to me, we're not talking competition right now. We're talking a responsibility towards the human race to make sure that the technology we develop has its upsides and its downsides, and we work on these downsides together to make it really safe and secure for everybody.
Okay.
You were talking about, I think that he was talking, when we were preparing this, remember that he was talking about putting layers on top of the infrastructure.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think whether it's infrastructure, or even like the open source ecosystem around the AI things, like it's a really interesting time. So take things like application hosting and compute. We're in a really interesting time where there's a lot more to play with. And if you would ask me 10 years ago, like, where are you going to have like a one-click deploy from your GitHub repo? Like, I might have said, yeah, I'll probably use Heroku. And Heroku is still definitely an option, but these days, like, I'm playing around with services like Render or, I don't know, like Fly.io or something like that. And it's really fun to see that energy in that level again. So when it comes down to the core major clouds, I'm not sure, but at that level where maybe when you're starting a new project or you're just starting to get scale, that's where you're going to end up spending the time instead of, kind of driving stick shift, if you will, like when you're not quite there yet, to need to spend that time. These value-added services that we can play with now that are finely tuned to the applications that we're building and make it super easy to get up and running, it's super fun to play around with it right now.
Okay.
And I think, returning to your question, I think that right now, instead of monopoly, what we have is a chaos. Okay, so right now, one of the biggest...
Productive or unproductive chaos?
It is what it is. Okay, so basically everybody's asking what model I start with.
Okay.
And we are helping the customers because they literally have so many options that I don't think that monopoly is a concern right now, because even in the cloud, things are much more clear. Depending on what type of service you want, you will go to Google Cloud or more to Microsoft Azure or to AWS. Right now in AI, it's a mess.
Okay.
So, no, I don't think that
I want
will
to come to the last trend or discussing, which I put up right before the beginning, shortage of developers, and how do you judge that? I think you're already coming from the open source community. Now, I think you have some things to say about, are we really experiencing one, or is it somehow stopping the digitization, or is it not as important as we think?
And we were talking about that because it's a shortage of developers. We don't think that it's a shortage of developers. We think it's a shortage of acquisition of new talent. Okay, that applies to developers. So we have been, and especially a company like Red Hat, I mean, we have been working with Java, very technology that has been there for the last 30 years. And the challenge is always, when you have this type of developers, it's difficult for them to learn new things because they are super expert on what they are doing right now. So the challenge is always to recycle what you know and start learning new things. But again, it's happening in my team. In my own team, I just received a note. I need to learn this. And I am like, yep, you need to. Because you are super expert on this, but now the customer is asking about that. Instruct Lab, that is the latest thing that we launched 2 months ago, and you need to do a session. So again, it's not something that is affecting developers only, it's across the industry. Guys, welcome, reinvent.
Okay. So the part of the shortage is maybe that companies are always looking for really specific kind of developers instead of being more open-minded and saying, well, of course, we can specialize, but first have a developer. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just trying to keep up with all this stuff too is really tough. So I think a lot of times, I mean, there used to be this classic example, let's call it again something like 8 to 10 years ago. By the way, I love your take that Java died 13 years ago. Super hot take on the last talk at the event. But same when Swift came around, one of the classic jokes was like everyone was looking for developers with like 8 years of experience in a language that had been around for 2 years. And I think you'll see that in the AI space as well, where just trying to keep up with this stuff is like, no one can do it really. And maybe that's okay, but I think there are those of us who love to drink from the fire hose. I'm one of those people, and then I like to find the stuff that I find is going to be relevant to, say, our developers internally, right? Where maybe they'll be interested in it, maybe they won't, but like it's good to put some of that stuff out there, and then occasionally write a little repo or something just to say like, hey, here's how you get started with this library that helps you build a RAG system to, you know, customize your AI with the bespoke data, just as one example. But yeah, I think things are just constantly changing, and that's part of the sort of maybe the feeling of shortage of developers, because I agree with you. There's no shortage of software developers in the universe, but sometimes the things that we're looking for in a given moment, it's just, those aren't things that were taught in school because they were invented last month.
Okay. Coming to this, because that's kind of interesting as well, how it's kind of the question how we design a company suitable for developers, or how do we integrate those in a company? Because when you look at the numbers, you have thousands of developers in bigger corporations. You have a lot of the value, or sometimes most of the value, is created by developers. So we are shifting towards more and more developer-shaped companies who were maybe for manufacturing companies or design companies. We're getting into developer-shaped companies. Irina, what does that mean for a culture of a company? How do we deal with that? Or are we ready to deal with that? And maybe just because pointing out to the question that we are haven't learned right now to exploit the variability of developers maybe within a business subject?
I think this is an excellent question. I would love to have more time on this one, but let me try to make it a short answer. We are one of the companies who have, like, obviously a lot of developers, and we walked from through this innovation cycle. And here's what we learned. Number one, break down the silos, because developers really strive if there is a community, if there is a crowned mind that is working on things and try to improve every day. Go away from this know-it-all culture to learn-it-all culture. And it's really, really hard, but it's really important to embrace. And honestly, put yourself out there. It doesn't matter if you just finished university or you've been coding for 30 years. This time now, this is maybe the most exciting you've seen in the software industry. And I think you can be, the lighthouse to the rest of your organization. And let's bring this spirit back to everybody else, because I think we have a lot to give.
Ignacio, for open source, do you miss this kind of flexibility or openness sometimes in?
Yeah, what I think that has changed in the past, we used to be more associated with the IT systems, with the infrastructure. Right now, that has changed completely. Okay, so right now, if you are a company, no matter what company you are talking about, innovation is a core element of the company, and developers are behind that innovation. It's always the analogy that we always say is the CEO can define whatever he wants. He can say, no, we need to go there. The developer team is going to tell them, no, there, it's not going to happen. We're going to go there because this is what we can code. So if you want to go there, best of luck. You have your vision. I am telling you exactly where we are going to arrive. And that is what the developer team is going to tell them. So again, I think that the situation has changed a lot during the last years. I am very proud to be part of that culture because, again, yeah, CEO, great idea.
So the CEOs has as much to learn as developers constantly. Lots of new world. We have finished, unfortunately.
Thanks, everyone, for this panel. So this was the last panel of today. Sadly, this comes to an end here on Tech Leaders stage. I hope you had a great time. Please proceed to the closing event on the main stage, and I hope to see you all back again on Tech Leaders stage in 2025. Thank you.